You know what, Jamie? Let's pop off right now. We got to get started.
We got to go.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's get the people in the chat. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Mailbag Tuesday, and it is a mega mailbag. People are fired up, Jamie. There must be a big game coming up this weekend.
I've heard.
People are fired up. Tons of questions. This is going to be a long one. Strap in. Xander makes his triumphant return to the pod, to the show. He wants to ban anyone who sells their tickets to an OSU fan. So Xander's handing out bans.
That's fair.
Right as the show starts.
Fair.
I can't hate on that. I think that's correct. So thank you to Xander for being back. It's been a little bit. Maybe the Deuce Knight news got him out of his hibernation slumber there. So it's good to see him here. That's very exciting news for Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman landing Deuce Knight, major athlete. What an incredible athlete. Obviously there's work to do as a quarterback, but athletically wise, he is a
freak.
Extremely exciting prospect there. So thank you everyone for tuning in. If this is your first time catching us, please hit the like button, please hit subscribe, and please hit the notification bell so you know when it is we are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. If you like the show so much you want to listen to it there, or if there's something you wanted to catch up on, you can catch us there as well. And before we get going, Jamie, Notre Dame is wearing green, and there's lots of green going around. Maybe even people wearing their jackets that are green, that are very nice, and people should check them out. And something that you should check out is esqclothing.com. And if you're looking to upgrade your wardrobe, ESQ has created the world's first bamboo dress shirt, crafted from high-quality bamboo fabric. It's the softest and most comfortable shirt you'll ever put on. It's not only more sustainable than cotton, but also feels cooler, has stretch, is odor wrinkle resistant, even machine washable. You've seen ESQ's one-piece collar bamboo dress shirt, and it's the perfect shirt for today's business meeting or heading for a night out. Use ISD15 and get 15% off all online items. That's ISD15 for 15% off. All right, Jamie. Big day. PQ, what it do? Eating a delicious breakfast burrito, hanging out with Jamie and Greg. Need Saturday to come ASAP. Go Irish. Jamie, over the weekend, it was kind of business as usual as far as the shows and prep and everything. And yesterday, I was listening to Marcus Freeman's presser, and then I was listening to you and Mike on Power Hour, and I thought, I just got that feeling. I got that big game feeling, Jamie. Where are you at? Where are your emotions right now? Tell me about your emotions.
I have that big game feeling since last week. Notre Dame wasn't supposed to overlook Central Michigan, but I did my job for Central Michigan, but I've been prepping for Ohio State for a long time. I think this is kind of, I always think of, whenever I think of any kind of this is the big moment, the big games for Notre Dame, I always think of that old NFL Films clip with Bill Parcells, where he's like, this is where you lift all them weights. I'm like, this is why you lift all them weights. They do all of this stuff is for games like this, right? These games, they, not to steal the SEC thing, they mean more. They mean more than every other game. It's one of those things where it's obvious too. It means more to the players. It means more to the coaches. It means more to the fans. Everyone. Ohio State wasn't shy about it. They are right after they kicked the snot out of Western Kentucky. They were being like, okay, well, now we know next week is we're going to Notre Dame. This is why you come to Ohio State to play games at Notre Dame. It's the same thing. Everybody knows these are what you. No one goes to Ohio State or no one goes to Notre Dame to go, to play Western Kentucky or Central Michigan. You play to go play Notre Dame or Ohio State. That's what you want.
Yeah. And to that end, you mentioned the work you've been putting in on Ohio State. Your scouting report went out today, and I was giving it the once over. It's a tremendous document. Good job by you on that. And for people listening, I have linked the scouting report in the description below of this. So go to the description on YouTube if you're listening, and click on it and read it. It's a free article, right? I checked with Jamie beforehand. It's free for everyone. And like, if you want to learn about the Ohio State football team and what they've done, and all the background and the context, everything, check out Jamie's scouting report on that. It's really good information. It's good stuff. So TDDP 574. Thank you for the super chat. Would running diamond formation be beneficial? Maybe confused OSU defense. What do you think, James? Diamond formation.
I mean, have they been working on it for a long time? It's one of those things. I mean, I don't think it's like one of those things where, man, you're just waiting to break that specific formation out. But
yeah.
So I guess I would turn it into, you want to, whatever you have stuff saved up for this week and for formation wise, play wise, and yeah, you bring out the extra for this week. And like Xander says, Notre Dame doesn't need gimmicks. It's not about gimmicks, right? It's about like what we've kind of always talked about. It's the wrinkles, right? So it's just those little things where it's like they never saw this formation before, right? So we're just doing it. It's the same personnel, but we're tweaking the formation just a little bit. So maybe it looks like they're running counter here, but they're not, right? Like, it's like Notre Dame has been running that counter with the tight slot all year. Well, now they run that counter misdirection that they've ran before, like stuff like that, right? Where it's like, you're just working off it. Like, okay, so you had that success running, the spider 2 wide banana, right? Leaking out the fullback against NC State. Well, guess what? You want to bet that Ohio State's repping that in practice a million times this week? Yeah, they are. Well, what are you going to do to counter off that, right? Like that's what it's about.
And a good example of that is Clemson last year, where Notre Dame's running their plays, but they would flip formation, or they would line up they would go unbalanced in one, and so it messes up the alignment of the defense, creates leverage for you, and then that's how you create an advantage there. Is that a gimmick? No, it's the same play. So the plays you've been working on are all the same. You're still running the same stuff, but it's out of a different formation. It's out of a look that they haven't seen yet, right? That's what Navy does to Notre Dame every year. There's always something that's different. And so that's what Notre Dame can do. It's not so much that you've been holding it back. It's just, it's specific to what Ohio State does. So good question. Like, it led to a different kind of, discussion there. Tyler Borgman says, I feel like there's been a ton held back defensively from a blitz standpoint. We haven't had to show yet. Mike mentioned things on Power Hour that a lot of things showed up in camp, hasn't been there. I think that was actually your point, Jamie, if I remember. I was listening to the show. Yeah. So it was Jamie's point. And it's kind of the same thing, right? You've got things built in that are for specific to opponent. And this is when you bring them out, right? This is why you work on those things. All right, so let's get to the questions here, and we'll get going. Lots to talk about. All right, the first question from JM. How big of an upgrade did we make in trading Tommy Rees for Coach Gino? Would greatly appreciate any of your observations or speculation on his coaching style or presence on the recruiting trail. And we're going to have there's a question about this later that is kind of an offshoot on this question. It's about the advantage of having a dedicated quarterback coach that isn't the OC. So Gino Guiduglia is just working with quarterbacks and how that's beneficial. So what do you think about Gino Guidugli and the job he's done. Have you heard anything about his coaching style or your observations on his coaching style and on the recruiting trail?
I mean, I think he's done a really good job. I think one of the things is like everybody wants to dunk on Tommy Rees. I get it. I mean, it's time, and no worries, Tyler. You're good for that. We were both talking about it, so it's not a big deal. But so people want to dunk on Rees, but it's like they want to casually ignore that. Oh, he landed CJ Carr and he landed Sam Hartman. So it's like, okay, he did a pretty good job of that, right? I mean, you can say some of the other stuff about what he's done. That's fine. But I definitely think like having someone who's not, he's able to develop all the guys more, because he doesn't have to focus always on the big picture. It's like, so he's not like yelling at a tight end to be like, no, you're supposed to run that at like 12 yards or whatever, right? Like, these other little details where he doesn't have to worry about that. He's only worrying about the quarterback.
Yeah.
It's like how in the NFL, you have an offensive coordinator, but you also have a quarterback coach, right? Like there really should be, like kind of like how Notre Dame has it on defense, where Al Golden is technically the linebackers coach, but he's not. He's just the defensive coordinator. And that's why, they brought in somebody to coach linebackers specifically because of that, right? So, I think it is beneficial. I think he's done a good job. Obviously, look at how good Hartman has, and that was a transition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen that, especially from the spring to now, him improve in all of these other little areas where that were different from what he was doing at Wake Forest, right? And I don't know. Like I think, and obviously he landed Deuce Knight, so that's a pretty good job. And
Works.
I think, and I think his development of Desmond Ridder, that is something that's beneficial to them landing Deuce Knight, right? Too. So, I mean, I think he's done a really good job. I think Tommy Rees did a better job than people probably give him credit for, because you got to remember, no one was like, Ian Book, man, this guy's a 5-star. He ended up being a pretty good quarterback, and I think Ian Book like kind of reached his ceiling as a player, and that's kind of what you're supposed to do as a coach, right? So, I mean, I think you can get on him for, maybe missed out evaluations, and I think some of that's fair. But, I think it's probably focused too much on dunking on Rees and just focus on the job that Gino's doing, which is a really good job.
Yeah. The Ian Book piece, I mean, when he signed with Notre Dame, I mean, if you just said, what is the upper ceiling of what he can be, I'll bet you no one even said he would be like what he turned out. I mean, especially with the wins, I mean, he led him to two playoff berths. I don't think anyone would have predicted that. So that's a good job there. My biggest criticism of Rees is that he couldn't get his quarterbacks, and I've said this before, he couldn't get his quarterbacks to see the game the way that he did. He couldn't get them to see what he saw out there. And that's his responsibility. I think he has good ideas. I think he has, look, the Clemson. I mean, look what he did last year with Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner.
Yeah.
Those guys were a combined 10 for 27 last week for, I think, less than 100 yards.
Yeah.
And like 6 turnovers. And they went 9-4 with that. Like, that's really good. That's a good job.
To be fair, Buckner did do that with Rees.
He did, no, but I'm saying that, but they went 9-4.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, look at what they beat Clemson in a game where they couldn't throw the ball. Right now, there's the other side of that. It's like, well, you're responsible for that room. He's responsible for those guys. So there's that piece. So I don't want to get on too much on Rees. I mean, he did some good things, and there are some things that left everyone wanting. Right? Maybe even him. But you look at Sam Hartman, right? Like getting him ready to play under center, play with his back to the defense, right? Like turning his back. Like when at Wake Forest did he ever turn his back to the defense? Like almost never, if at all. So got to get him there. He knows where to go with the ball, right? He's making the proper read. He's always looking. He's always looking where he's supposed to. So like it all looks very crisp for him, and I think that's due to coaching. So look, in like you said, landed Deuce Knight, and that's a really good job by him. So yeah, stock up on Gino Guidugli right now. Next question, XRND 1994. Who do you think is about to break out soon that has not quite taken the next step?
I thought about this when I saw it,
Yeah.
and obviously, there's been a lot of guys who have had kind of like breakout weeks in terms of like they've had a big week. I mean, obviously, when you're 4-0 and you're doing really well, and like so, Tobias Merriweather didn't have hasn't had monster games, but he's made those plays, right? That we've kind of said that he needs to make, right? So, and I think what CFB Hurt says, about hopefully Riley Mills, like it's not about even predicting that. It's about like I don't know who it is, but this week would be a big week for
Would be nice.
Riley Mills, Jordan Botello, right? Like Sneed, Burnham, like as Xander said, like it's this kind of week, right?
Yeah.
Where I mean, you're probably not Sneed and Burnham aren't going to play enough to do it. But even if you are there, if Sneed plays 5 snaps in this game and he makes 2 plays, like that is there. Like that is all that matters, right? Jordan Botello to me is the most interesting one because, I mean, I think with Mills, one thing I say, Mills played well against NC State. You just wanted to see him just be dominant and be that guy, and he just hasn't been that guy. So I think like and maybe that just won't happen. But this is a game where he has a good game this week. That's the kind of thing where all of a sudden he becomes like maybe a day 2 guy or something, like instead of being like, yeah, he's a late round pick that he's just a freak and we're just going to draft him and see if we can develop him or something like that. Right. I think Botello is interesting too. As Jim mentioned about Botello showing up in the big games, like whatever, he had the block punt against Clemson. That was obviously big. So the bowl game, when he just got to kind of let loose and just rush the passer, that was the best that he has looked at Notre Dame, where you just look like a totally confident pass rusher. So to me, the big thing with Botello is get them into 3rd and long and just like, I don't know what the best way to motivate Botello is because different guys do different things. There's guys that like you tell them, you know what, man, you've sucked and you got to step up here.
Yeah.
And that's their thing. And they're like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. Right. Like then there's other people that you need to kind of build up and pump up. So I don't know what the best way to kind of push his buttons is, but I would think like show these guys like I'd be showing him all of his best clips this week and being like, it's time to ball out. It's time to be this guy. Cause that's the main thing. Right. So, I mean, guys like, Casey Wills mentioned Cross. I mean, I expect Howard Cross to have a good game. Like he's going to have a good game. He's broken out. He's been having a great season.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of these things where last year, and you remember, Greg, I know you remember, Jason Admiral talked a lot of smack before the game. Did not back it up. Did not back it up. So I don't care. People shouldn't talk smack before this game. You got to go out and play and prove it. But, Foskey, and fair enough, he was going against 2 really good tackles, but he was like a nothing in the game. And Jason Admola was a nothing in the game. 1 pressure between both those guys. That can't happen. Notre Dame only had a 20% pressure rate against Ohio State last year. That can't happen. That can't happen. So So where does it? Who is it going to be? I don't know. Who did this have to be? Someone on the defensive line,
Yeah.
someone in the pass rush. I think that is key.
Javonte Jean-Baptiste.
That's absolutely
That's who it's going to be. He has been showing me something the last 2 weeks. It's not just pass rushing, his effort in the run game, his effort period, right? Like he's making so many effort plays. It's like he is hungry. And look, no one wants to show out in this game more than him. Nobody does. And I can't believe how long he is. He is a big, long player. I just think he is going to have a huge game. Patrick Carter says revenge game for Javonte Jean-Baptiste. It's not even like, to me, he is one where it's like, he kind of reminds me of Xavier Watts last year, how there were just a couple games where it was like, man, he is on the cusp. Like he is close.
Yeah.
And then he started to, kind of really ascend there. And I think Javonte Jean-Baptiste is there. I don't think there's anyone on the D line, with the exception of maybe Howard Cross, who is playing at a higher level than him. I think he has earned the increased playing time.
He's been light years ahead of Nana. He's been way better than Nana.
Yeah.
That's not a competition anymore. He is the starter. Yeah.
Yes. And he's been really, really good. I think he is one. And I think Jeremiah Love is going to pop one in this game. He'll have the opportunity to pop one. It's like, I don't know if it's breakout, but I think there's something for him in this game. That's just a feeling. So that has, for him too, it's a little bit the way that he runs. I think that he really wants to, like, he how Dylan McCullough was talking about being about that life. I think he has bought into that. He really has. And there was a run in this game where, or in the last game in Central Michigan, where he got the ball and it looked like he could have bounced it. And I'm watching, I'm like, man, he could bounce this and get outside and maybe even score. But then I'm watching the way it's being blocked, and I was like, if he bounces this, he might create a holding on the outside, the way that the tackle was blocking it. And I was like, you know what? Like that's really good understanding by him as a freshman. It's like, I could bounce it, but I'm not supposed to bounce it. Just knowing like they're blocking it so that I'm cutting up inside and not going outside of them. So just like him and just that buy-in, it just feels like he's very close right now. And so he is one where I think that could be, he could be a difference maker in terms of a game for Notre Dame this year, or in this game. Irish Bronx over under on NFL tight ends on the roster at 3.5.
Over.
Same.
Over. I mean, as long as Eli Reardon is able to come back and be healthy, then he's going to play in the league. Probably be a high pick. Holden stays. I mean, he's going to play in the league. Mitchell Evans is going to play in the league. I mean, if Mitchell Evans doesn't, even if, say, Mitchell Evans doesn't have like the kind of numbers that you're going to put up, he is going to be on a roster and play in the NFL for years. He's going to. He can block, and he's better. He's a better athlete than people give credit for. And then Cooper Flanagan is 262 pounds as a freshman.
He's already getting out there.
Yeah.
And you don't even notice because he's just doing the job.
Cooper Flanagan is going to play in the NFL. I mean, obviously Kevin Bauman's hurt, and I mean, he's probably, I mean, you'd just be hoping that he can play college football again. But yeah, those guys are all going to play in the NFL. They didn't miss. They didn't miss on those guys. No. That's for sure. Unsurprisingly, because Notre Dame doesn't matter who the coach is or whatever, they do a pretty good job of identifying and developing and using those tight ends well. I think they got a pretty, and it's funny because Greg, you did the rankings of the position groups with Chris Wilson and and Michael Bryan, our buddies before the season on the Rakes Report podcast. Check it out if you haven't. Chris is a great guy. They and everybody had kind of tight end at the bottom third because there's other positions that are more established. But probably by the end of the season, it's at least going to be in the top half. That's just kind of how it is. It's like they're too talented. So they got 4 guys that are going to eventually play in the NFL one day.
Yeah. It's funny because and I was thinking about that the other day, tight end was way too low. But then I thought, well, what position is actually they need to be dropped? Every position is kind of playing well right now. So it's kind of hard to say. If I was dropping anyone, it would be linebacker. And we'll get to that later. But Notre Dame's playing good football right now. Lee Weaver said, really need to flip Nelson. So here's the thing about that. When he committed to Nebraska, and we were talking about that on the show, and people said, it's a big deal. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if it's a big deal. If he can go to Nebraska, and that's fine. Someone else will come in and play in the NFL. And that's how I feel about it. And I think Notre Dame has earned that. Someone will come in and play in the NFL. And maybe it's him and maybe it isn't. But I don't know that they need to flip him. Why do they? They have 4 NFL tight ends on the roster right now. I don't know that they need to flip him. Alex Herman, what's up, buddy? Thanks for being in the show. The team is just good and deep. True fact. They are good and they are deep. And that bodes well going into this game. All right. Irish Bronx, another question. Which side of the ball gives you more confidence going into the game? This is a good question. I thought about this kind of a lot.
I was thinking about this, and I think the whole point of why Notre Dame is why the line is so tight, why it's gone down from it was like a touchdown, and now it's I think it's 3.5 or 3, depending on where you go now. SP plus, sorry, excuse me. They have it as a 1-point game, right? Ohio State is ranked first in SP plus.
Notre Dame is 4th.
Notre Dame is 4th. That's Bill Connolly's. He works for ESPN. Used to be SB Nation. That's his advanced stats metric. So for people who are unaware of it, the reason for that is because Notre Dame has played really, really well on both sides of the ball. And in fact, their SP plus ranking on offense and defense, they're top 10 in both. And Notre Dame has it. I think 4th might be the highest that I've seen Notre Dame ranked there in SP plus. And I know it's early season, whatever, it's where you finish. But they were even in the years that they went undefeated and stuff, they weren't like a top 5 team.
SP plus has traditionally undervalued Notre Dame relative to where they're ranked, I should say.
So, I mean, I couldn't say that I feel not confident about either sides of the ball because I really think that Notre Dame can hang, right, with Ohio State. So I don't. I really couldn't pick one to say it because I think it's pretty close.
Yeah, I would lean defense, and the reason I would lean defense is I am more confident that they can hang up front with Ohio State because I don't think Ohio State's line is that good. They had a good plan last year, and they've upgraded. So I think they've upgraded everywhere in the secondary because last year Ben Morrison wasn't a full-time player.
No,
I mean, remember Clarence Lewis was their boundary corner last year against Ohio State. Ben Morrison got time. He definitely played in the game and he made plays in the game, but they're better in the back.
Lewis might not barely play in this game.
Exactly. Yeah. He's going to be much less of a factor. I think Thomas Harper is an upgrade at the nickel. And I think this safety position is way better than it was last year. Very much so. So there's that piece. I think Marist is playing at a higher level. So I think that they are, with the exception of Isaiah Foskey It'd be great if he was playing in this game. But with the exception of that, I think they're a better team, and I think that the Ohio State offense is not as potent, especially certainly not at quarterback.
Quarterback and offensive line, they're not as good.
Yeah. Now, granted, you noted in your scouting report, like Travion Henderson looks a lot better than he did even last year against Notre Dame. So he looks all the way back. I think their running backs are really good, right? So that concerns me. So, but I'm more confident that Notre Dame can hang with them up front. That Ohio State's front seven against Notre Dame's line is a huge, huge matchup. I'm not saying I don't think Notre Dame can hang with them. It's just it's an open question for me.
I think
why I would say defense.
It's one of those things too. Like I think that and I mentioned it in the scouting report too, that I think they can run at both of their edges. Sawyer and Tuamolo. I hope I pronounce his name right. I really should look at the phonetic sound of it.
Yeah.
But JT, let's call him JT.
Yeah.
Those guys are just tremendous athletes. Great first steps. Just guys who are, you can see if it becomes a game where Notre Dame has to throw a lot, it's going to be bad. Like, I mean, even with Joe Alden, Blake Fisher, it's still not a good situation, especially because they got Michael Hall inside, who's a tremendous pass rusher. Right. And they got linebackers who are really good blitzers, and it's a great defense. This is a tremendous defense. Ohio State, easily the best defense Notre Dame will play this year. Not even close, I think. So if they get into like third and long, it's not going to be, Notre Dame isn't going to win as much. They're not. It's going to be very hard to win. So from that perspective, I would totally agree with you, Greg.
All right, let's go to the next question here. Chai Irish fan 45. If you're Jared Parker and the offensive staff watching Ohio State film, where are you confident you can hurt them and score some points?
Well, one, I think that their slot corners and their safeties, when those guys are matched up, those guys have given up plays.
Yeah.
Right. I think they're pretty good at outside corner. What's his face? God, what's his name? Their best corner.
Denzel
Denzel Burke. I wanted to call him Denzel Ward because I watched the game last night. But Denzel Burke is playing at a really high level right now. Like he's been better because he was supposed to be a guy who made a jump last year, but he didn't really. Mm-hmm. He's already got 7 havoc plays in 3 games, and he didn't really have the ball production. And just no one has got open against him. Like and obviously this is going to be a tougher test this week, but he's played really well. And Davis Igbenison, who's transferred from Ole Miss, he's solid, right? Like he's a physical guy. I think they'll go after him because he is very grabby. Like I think he'll probably give up a PI or something like that. But they don't have a really good nickel. Like Jordan Hancock, who was like a very highly ranked guy, he struggled outside last year. When he's played nickel this year, he has not looked great to me. Western Kentucky got him a couple times. And he's not a guy that I would feel super confident in. If I was them, Cameron Martinez has just been torched a bunch of times. Like he got torched last year. Lathan Ransom is a really good, like deep safety when he's coming downhill, it's scary. He is a very, very good player. But he's been beaten in coverage. He's like a guy who kind of like peaks a little bit. He gets out leverage in certain things. So he's a guy that if you get in man coverage, I think that's a guy you can attack. Right. So I think that's an area where if you're looking for explosives, I would say stuff out of the slot. That's where you're probably going to be attack them. And like I said earlier too, I think you can run at those edges. Those guys are very good pass rushers, but they want to rush the passer. They don't want to be run at. They don't want to be run at. And I think those are the kind of guys that, I was saying on Power Hour this week is like, Notre Dame, that's the one thing that you know about Notre Dame this year is like they want the smoke. Like Notre Dame was like, bring it. Like I want the physicality.
Yeah.
I don't know if those guys want to smoke. They prefer to rush the passer. So I would run at them.
Yeah. Jim Scales said play action on Rantham and Styles. The thing with those safeties is you alluded to it as well. They want to be aggressive. They want to hit. Like they are very aggressive football players. Like they like to your use your phrase, like they want to smoke too much in the back. Like they need to be a little bit more disciplined back there. And they haven't had the slot. So last year they went and got Tanner McAllister from Oklahoma State to play slot for them because they didn't have a good slot, and he played a ton, and now he's not there anymore. And so now they're using Hancock in that spot. And I just don't know that that's his best position. Right. So I think you have opportunities there. And so I think it would be smart for Notre Dame to obviously Chris Tyree, right? So the play that we saw, that's why the play that we saw against Central Michigan is such a big deal, because I think that's going to be available to them through play action. I think there's times when Notre Dame is in 12 personnel and you have two receivers to the side, they have Tobias Merriweather in the slot. I think that's something to watch. So that's going to be a good one. And then I think like Holden Stays is a tough matchup for everyone just because of his size and how big he is. He's very difficult, right? And so I think that's an advantage for Notre Dame. So, or I don't want to say advantage. It's a good area for Notre Dame to attack against Ohio State. So I'd be looking at that stuff. And then, like we talked about, like find a way for Jared Parker, like to get them in an odd front, in a weird front that they're not used to. Use formations, flip the formation, that sort of thing, motion, to just gain an advantage there. So I'd be looking for fighting Hanley's. Fast forward a week from today, Notre Dame has completed a convincing win at home over Ohio State, where the outcome was never in doubt. Many Notre Dame fans will reflexively pine for Notre Dame to take steps to secure the future of Coach Freeman. Given the AD is in flux and Duke, Clemson, and USC still loom, what should or shouldn't be done, and when, if a decisive victory over Ohio State, it evidences a next level for the program trajectory in year 2 of Marcus Freeman? So essentially, should they extend, let's say Notre Dame wins like 34-20. Should they extend Marcus Freeman during the press conference?
I think people know how that has gone for Notre Dame with that Bush push extension looking worse by the minute. It's always bad. It was a bad thing. Not that I wouldn't compare what Marcus Freeman is doing to Charlie Weiss or anything like that, but you don't need to extend him. If they want to reach out to, I mean, I'm sure if I'm Marcus Freeman's agent, I'm like, hey, do you want to talk? And
let's go.
Like, yes. I mean, I think Notre Dame would be like, yeah, we do want to talk. Right. But they don't need to extend him at any point during the thing. They shouldn't do. It's a huge win if that happens. A massive win. Things are going to be rolling, but let the rest of the season play out. And guess what? He's going to get paid anyways. He's going to get an extension anyways if that's the case, right? So, and also too, it's just the nature of it. Of everyone gets extended because it's like, oh, the recruiting. It's like you need to extend guys because it's like you need to say that they're going to be there for the next recruiting class. That's like a whole thing, right? So, whatever, they'll talk, but they don't need to extend him right after. And I mean, the AD being in flux, they already have the next AD, so it's like, and he's there. He's very. If you've noticed, he's around all the time. And believe me, like the other people involved in the money stuff for Notre Dame are around all the time too. They'll take care of him, right? Like they'll take care of him. So it's just the nature of what happens in college football. I mean, I would say the chances of him getting a big fat extension if he wins this game, I mean, 100%, like that is going to happen, but they don't need to do anything during the season.
Here's the thing. They could extend him if they want, right? That's they could, and they probably will, and I bet you they would if the scenario plays out like the question. They'll absolutely do that, and that makes Notre Dame no safer from him leaving if he wants to, because someone will just offer him as much money as it takes to get him if they want to do that. We've seen that already. So it doesn't provide any sort of anything for Notre Dame other than a better buyout.
Yeah, and the other thing is that what he will do is, in addition to getting more money and all that kind of stuff for himself, he will leverage it to get his assistants more money, to
Right.
get, hey, the Goog getting upgraded. I'm like, but that is the kind of thing that happens anyways. When it happens, it's like all of a sudden that guy was like, who's been like, yeah, I want to cut the check. Let me watch it. And then all of a sudden Notre Dame beats Ohio State decisively or whatever. I mean, that check's going to get cut.
The money's coming in.
Yeah. So it's just, it's all works together. It all works together, and it'll work itself out.
Yeah. All right. Next question from Drew Brennan, 77. Based on what we saw from Notre Dame's run defense last week against Central Michigan, how concerned are you with OSU's rushing attack? Additionally, do the missed tackles worry you?
Not based on anything from the CMU stuff. Check out the rewatch notes for anyone that did it, or you can check out some of the stuff that Greg's been posting up on Twitter too with some of these breakdowns. A lot of the stuff was like self-inflicted wounds that were like, probably not happen if JD Bertrand's there. One or two guys who are depth guys kind of making mistakes that could have been like tackles for losses that end up being in their only kind of big plays in the run game. And like Marcus Freeman said, the second series was the only series where it was like, this is really poor tackling. So I wouldn't, judge it based on the one series, or that game even. But I think people should be concerned about OSU's rushing attack because their backs are way better. Henderson is a stud. Trey Anum he looks probably the best out of everyone right now. And he's, for those who don't know, he was a guy who Notre Dame had recruited. He was like kind of a linebacker, running back type, really good athlete who went to Arizona State. I wonder why he went to Arizona State in the first place. Maybe the guy likes to party. Who knows?
Yeah.
But he went to ASU and played running back there. It was pretty good. And they transferred back to Ohio State, played linebacker for a year, and then moved back to running back. And he's having a great year to begin this year.
Yeah.
And then really like the third guy, Mayan Williams, was kind of like their best back last year. And not quite Audric Estime, but like kind of like a mini version of that, right? Yeah. Like he's a very tough guy to tackle. So those guys are really, really good. If you're not winning up front against this team, like that's going to be a problem. I wouldn't even say it's just like it's just a different test, and Notre Dame has to be up for it. But nothing from that CMU game makes me think that like, oh, those kind of breakdowns would happen in this game because like, I don't think Jalen Sneed is going to get a ton of reps as, as in a base linebacker, right? Like he'll be a sub package guy.
Yeah. And I would echo that. Like a lot of what I saw against Central Michigan was like the mistakes are reserves, like Antonio Carter coming free. We haven't seen him do that in a game yet, So it's like for the first time they send him on a blitz, he comes free. He's in between. Like, am I going to hit the quarterback or am I going to hit the running back or how do I want to attack this? And what often happens is you kind of try to split the baby and you end up doing nothing. You end up hitting nobody. You saw Jalen Sneed mistakes in a position that he hasn't been in a ton. You saw Jack Kaiser mistakes where he's kind of slow to react to things when he's playing Mike, and he hasn't been doing that. Like you and I saw a couple formations where I texted you like, is there any way that Notre Dame is lined up correctly on this play? And we were like, no way. Like there's no one in the
answer
C
was
gap.
no. Yeah.
Like there's no one in the C gap. Like that can't be right. So things like that. But it is a concern independent of whatever we've seen from Notre Dame this year. You know, they were never going to play a team in the type of game where you thought I'm no concerns about OSU running the ball. They're good offense, and they're a good offense, and they have good running backs, and it's a concern no matter what. So, but I don't think we saw anything against Central Michigan that would make me feel like worse about it either. Jamie, I'm going to read this question, and I'm going to go check something. I hear water running. That doesn't sound good. So I'm going to read this, and I'll be right back. Collie 123. This is the most hyped home game since when? Both teams undefeated. Notre Dame has a Heisman contender, both ranked in the top 10, a fan base very much behind the head coach. What do you think, Jamie? Most hyped home game since when? And I'll be right back.
Clemson 2020 was a pretty hyped home game. I mean, because it was during the pandemic, that was obviously it was subdued, you know, because there wasn't a full crowd there. But I mean, that was a very big game and very hyped up. You know, Casey Willis, you brought up the Georgia game. I mean, the Georgia game was different because it was like 2017 and it was like the reboot for Brian Kelly. And it was like, you didn't kind of know what Notre Dame was at that point. And also you didn't really know what Georgia was, because Georgia in that previous season wasn't that great. They were like finished 8-5. And that was the year that they kind of started to take off and become Kirby Smart's Georgia. Right. So
Notre Dame was favored in that game.
Yeah. So it was a really good game. And in hindsight, it was a very, very huge game, you know, nationally, but I don't think it was anything like that. I mean, I don't know. It's got to be Clemson 2020 because that's not that long ago, right? Like, I'm sure that, I mean, I do think this Notre Dame team is better than the 2020 team. Like, I think by a fair margin, right? But I also think that this Ohio State team, minus Clemson not having Trevor Lawrence in 2020, is a better team than that too.
Yeah, and they're coming in full health as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the 2020 team, the Notre Dame this year is better than them, but the 2020 team went and did the thing, right? And so Notre Dame has to do it in this game, right? They just need to. So, but yeah, I would say Clemson 2020 for sure. Especially just like, you know, the COVID year and everything and how hard that was, and everyone was in their house. Like everything was hyper focused on that game because there wasn't a lot going on in people's lives because of COVID. So, Chris, we'll do game predictions on Thursday. I don't know about you, Jamie. I need to think about it a little bit before I go making a prediction.
I already know, but guess what? It's what they call this. What they call in the industry a tease. Tune in.
You're gonna tease it, Jamie.
Tune in. Thursday.
Jamie already knows. Moby Onion says have opposing. Let me see this. I can't. It's hard to read when I don't blow it up. All right. Have opposing O lines kept the Notre Dame D line wives' names out of their mouths? I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means.
Are the lack of tackles for loss something to be concerned about versus OSU, or is that a misleading stat? So Notre Dame is 118th nationally in tackles for loss per game. So are you concerned about that?
I think it's a bit of a misleading stat, because especially because of the last two games and how they kind of approached the pass rush. Like, okay, and this is something, whatever. I mean, I do think people kind of give PFF a hard time with some of their like O-line grades, and I definitely think some of those are bad and some of the other great stuff. But I think for the most part, their counting stats are really, really good and valuable. I mean, they're not traditional counting stats, but the stats that they use where they do like, you know, pressures and stuff like that, that is valuable. But like they had Notre Dame blitzing on like 60% of the time against Central Michigan, and that just wasn't true. Like, because a blitz is supposed to be like, more than 4 rushers.
Yeah.
Right? And Notre Dame like rushed 3 a lot against Central Michigan because they had one linebacker green dog in the back, so he kind of waited for the back to release, and then Marist was spying like a lot of times too. So those like count as blitzes, but it's like you're really only rushing 3 against 5 there. So, and they were specifically trying to keep in the pocket, and that's the kind of thing too. I mean, you want to see them finish more. I think that's for sure. I don't know. I mean, I do think that like Howard Cross doesn't have a lot of TFLs, but he's been very disruptive, and he has made a difference in that respect too. And there's been like a lot of plays where Notre Dame has made plays that I'm like, oh, that's a TFL, but it's like they lost a half yard, so it doesn't count. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
there's been
yeah.
a lot of that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I really don't think that it's a huge concern. It's not like it's not great. You'd like to see more of it. That's for sure. But I don't think it is, especially because the havoc rate is like 18%. And when you consider where it's, the Navy game, everyone has a lower havoc rating. It's Navy because of, the kind of offense they run. So really in like the 3 other games, it's like, 20% ish, which is good. It's very good. So, but I would say this though, they need a high havoc rate in this game. And
they do.
They need to, I mean, they've caused all these fumbles, 7 forced fumbles, 9 that the opposite for forced 9. They need to land on one of those fumbles. Like that needs to happen. They need to, they need stuff like that. They need plenty of havoc, negative plays. I think that's kind of obvious.
I need more from Bertrand and Kaiser. That's what because Marist is very disruptive right now. But I feel like Bertrand and Kaiser, like you should be in the backfield more. You do need more playmaking from those guys. They're seniors. You got to have it. I don't want to say it's concern. I want more. I want more from them. And to people, people put in the chat about so basically, is the D line not going off on the O line because the O line hasn't said anything negative about the D line? Their wives. It's a Chris Rock, Will Smith reference. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
So maybe it didn't fit as well as intended, but that's what it is. So,
hey, I appreciate the effort.
Yeah, Irish One says, how much new offense and defense do we see in this game that have not shown at all? Anything specific they will use to try and attack Ohio State? We've kind of talked about this a little bit, just in terms of.
I think we don't need to go too deep in this because we kind of mentioned before, but I'd expect a decent amount of new, like in terms of like some of the pressure stuff that they haven't shown. You're going to see some different pressure stuff in this game. Just like how in the I would say you compare it to the NC State game where they ran stuff in that game that they hadn't in the previous 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
And on both offense and defense, right?
Yeah.
And same kind of thing in this game. So that's kind of how much you should just expect, that kind of different change.
Yeah. Iris One, another question. Do we see Lorenzo Styles in the game? So I've been monitoring this one all year. He's only played special teams. I thought he was going to redshirt. And maybe he still will, because he played special team snaps in the opener against Indiana and didn't play against Youngstown State. So I thought, well, and I monitor like the special team stuff too, obviously. And I thought, well, he didn't get in the game as a defender against Indiana. So maybe they put him out there and to do special teams in game 1, red shirt, and then have 2 years left. 2 years left in 24 and 25. But they played him 2 special team snaps against Western Kentucky. And I thought, well, that's weird. And also, he can't get defensive snaps in a 63-10 victory.
Yeah.
Like, huh? Like I don't get that. Like, to me, you have to redshirt him. Like, you literally have to. What's the point of just so maybe he'll play in this game and then they'll just kind of put him in one
You
more
should
and
be
shut him
telling
down.
them that I want a red shirt at this point, unless because you're doing him a disservice.
Yeah, he needs the time. He needs the eligibility because he might want to go somewhere else and play, because he's going to be having his degree fairly soon. So he's going to want a time. He should not.
He'll only have one more year left if he plays this year. So
yeah, he should not burn a year playing two snaps of punt coverage against Western Kentucky. Like, that should not happen. So we might see him, but he's only been a special teams player so far. So if so, that's where we'll see him play. Silverback asks, who are your 3 players that must emerge or elevate their game to the next level, going to giving Notre Dame a better shot to beat Ohio State? That's a good question.
I mean, I think we kind of already talked about some of those guys in the defensive line. I think those would be big, Botello and Mills. I think those are guys to look for. It would be huge if they emerged and elevated their game. But I think it's this game, and it's not to give away something that I'm going to write about in 6 Thoughts, but I really think that it's like these games are about not just like the guy who just stepped up and had a great game in this game, because you can have that with, like, Jay Hayes had a really good game in 2017 against Georgia.
Yeah.
And that's about it. You know what I mean? Like, that was kind of his time, right? I think it's about your best players. So I think Sam Hartman, who's been fantastic, obviously. I mean, I'm not saying that he hasn't, but he's got to elevate, right? Like, that's it's important. Blake Fisher, huge. He has to elevate his game. There's almost too many. It's just, but it's like, but guys like Blake Fisher, I would say 3 on offense or on defense. Blake Fisher, Sam Hartman, and Audric Estime, just because Estime has been fantastic, but just he has to be at his best, because they aren't winning unless he is like, just, if he's running through tackles the way that he's done against Ohio State, that's what they need. The same kind of thing. And then on defense, it's like Maris Leofau has to have a big, big game. Howard Cross has to have a big, big game. Benjamin Morrison has to have the big X Watts. Yeah. It's like these guys, those are the guys that I know now I'm naming way more than 3, but it's just, those are the guys that it matters the most.
Yeah. So I used to say this about basketball a lot, and it's different. It's more apt to basketball because there's only 5 on the court. But like, people would talk about, like, I talk to Matt about this all the time, because Matt is like the biggest LeBron apologist you've ever met, ever. He's from Cleveland, I get it, right? And Matt's from Ohio, so I understand that. He's like, he tells me he's watched every game since LeBron was 4 years old. And he's always like, and we'll text about the Lakers sometimes, and I'm like, LeBron is just, he's not doing it. Like, him and Anthony Davis, like, this is not this level. And Matt's always like, well, they need more shooters. And it's like, I understand they need more shooters, like, that's fair. But to your point on this, like, if your stars aren't stars, then what are we talking about? What are we talking about? If the stars don't play like your stars, then it doesn't matter what, Jay Hayes does, or like, Riley Mills, or Holden Stays. Like, it's Sam Hartman. Go be great. Audric Estime, go be great, And to this point, like, Jordan Botelho and Riley Mills, like, you got to go be great, man. Like, this is why You're a starting D lineman against Ohio State. You got to be awesome. Blake Fisher, Zeke Correll against Michael Hall.
Yeah,
you got to be great, man. Like this,
Riley Mills, you're on the freaks list. Play like a freak.
Yeah,
this
you
is
got
the
on
game.
the freaks list. You got to go show it. You got to do it. It's just this is what these games are. You got to show out. You got to show out in the big ones. S Nerg says big players make big plays in big games. Who do you think will be those guys for Notre Dame on Saturday? Like we just said it. Like it's got to be that group. Pops is in the house, Jamie. We just want to make that announcement every time. Thank you for being here, Pops. So that's where it is. Like the great players, you got to step up and do it. Ben Morrison, have a great game. Cam Hart, go be a star. Go.
Yeah.
Xavier Watts, all those guys. Like just and it's not that I have doubts about any of them. It's just that these games are for the stars. You know, the stars are the ones that need to show up for these.
Go back and look at all those games those big games that Notre Dame has played in recent years too, and like Jeremiah Wosu-Koramoah, right? In
Ian Book has his best game he's ever had. Kyron Williams, 3 touchdowns.
Kyron Williams. Go back to 2012 and Manti in like in all those games. Like he basically had a pick in every big game, right? Like he always made that kind of play, right? Like that's when it matters, right? That's when it matters. And that if he didn't do that, then Manti's not getting Heisman love. That's how it happens.
Yeah. All right. CHSFB 75. Which pass catcher steps up their game and becomes the man? So if you had to guess one pass catcher.
I mean, I don't know if anyone's going to become the man, but I do think this could be a big Chris Tyree game in terms of him having a couple of big plays. So he's obviously had like, he's got 4 explosives on the year. It leads the team. But I think he could have like 100-yard day because he gets a couple big ones, right? Like that is on the table for him because of not just because he's shown some stuff this year, obviously, but also because of the matchup. So I think he would be my kind of dark horse for that. And then I would also kind of think Stays is going to have a big game.
So, I mean, let's just stick with the theme, right, Jamie? If I could get this to load, because let's see. Okay, against Clemson, 2020. Let's just stick with the theme on this. Javon McKinley, 5 catches, 102 yards. Like that's stepping up there. Like to me, Jaden Thomas, wide receiver 1. Let's make some plays. Like contested plays. There's going to be contested catches to be had in this game. And you got to win those.
Yeah.
You got to win those. Like, and so he's the guy, like if you're on the boundary, and again, I'm not saying he's not capable. He's absolutely capable. And this isn't about him like it just being disappointing or anything like that. It's just that these games are for players like him to where it's like, look, if Chris Tyree can give you the type of contribution that like Avery Davis gave the team in 2020, in that one, where it's like there's going to be opportunities for him. I think there's going to be opportunities for Tobias. But Jaden Thomas is the leader of that room. And so he's the one, like, you got to step up. The leader has to step up in a game like this. It's just the nature of the big game.
By the way, just quick mention here that obviously this is going to be the best secondary that Notre Dame has played this year. But Notre Dame 9 of 12 on contested catches this year. So
it's important.
75% on 50-50 balls. That's good. So
yeah,
if they do that in this game, that's going to be a good thing.
That'll be a good sign. Loyal Stepson says, could Sonny Styles be a concern in covering our tight ends and backs?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. He is a very talented player. Like he's the guy that could, because he's such a unicorn. I mean, he's the guy who could match up with Stays and really like present problems there. But I mean, the thing is that Stays isn't Michael Mayer in terms of how they're going to isolate him. Like, I think if this was like a Michael Mayer game, that would be the kind of thing where if Notre Dame was playing a guy like that, who's getting on it? Not to just the token Kyle Hamilton mentioned. Kyle Hamilton was, if that's the thing, Hamilton is taking that guy, right? So it's a big third down. All right, that's Kyle. You got him. Like, that's the kind of thing, right? So he could be that, but I mean, I don't know if they're going to treat stays like that, or are they going to treat the running backs like that in this game, in terms of how, like, he's always going to have a back or whatever. And the other thing is too, is that he's one of these guys that he's so versatile that they probably want to use him in different ways. I mean, I will say this too, like, he's looked good, but he hasn't been like unbelievable. This would be his breakout game.
Yeah.
And he is obviously a super, super talented athlete, but he hasn't had the kind of start to the season where you're like, oh man, Sonny Styles is like, right now it's more of like, oh, he's coming, he's going to be this, but it hasn't quite shown yet. But this is the kind of game where, you make a name for yourself.
Yeah, this is that, like, all the OSU pods right now are talking about Kyle Hamilton. I mean, not Kyle Hamilton, about Sonny Styles. Like, could this be the game for him? Could this be his time? That's what they're all saying. I want to get to Patrick Carter's question because he brought up Kyle Hamilton. That's why I'm thinking of him. Is current Phil Jurkovec so inaccurate that Kyle Hamilton himself would struggle to pick him off?
I'm not even joking that I think that Kyle Hamilton might be the reason why Phil Jurkovec is like, his whole career went down the toilet. Because
why? Because he intercepted him 75 times in fall camp.
Greg, let's get accurate on the numbers. It was 375. Okay. I'm not even joking. I've never seen any player intercept one quarterback more than he intercepted. I mean, whatever. It was a lot. I mean, obviously we're being hyperbolic, but I do think it was like, he probably like woke up in cold sweats thinking about it, because it was like, that happened. And maybe that was the start where he was like, and he's always been this, kind of giving this bravado of like, of how he's, what kind of player he is. But I think secretly he's got to be like, oh, man, I'm not that dude. Like, because he's not that dude. Right. So, and I think Kyle Hamilton is part of the reason for it, to be honest. I'm dead serious.
I mean, it's so in the latest game, 8 of 20 for 81 yards and three interceptions. That's really bad. And I was looking this up I was looking at this game for another reason the other day, or yesterday. And I looked at Nate Montana's numbers when he came in against Michigan in 2010. He was 8 of 17 for 104 and one interception. Like, he had better numbers. Montana couldn't start at Pasadena City College, which, listen, as someone who's played against Pasadena City College and got absolutely destroyed by their quarterback who ended up at Iowa, and their running back that ended up at Washington State, and they got good players. It's not like there's not good players in junior college, but your quarterback should be starting at if you're going to be a good quarterback, you should start. That's tough. So I don't know, man. I don't want to talk too much about it because A, it's not cool, and B,
you don't need to kick a guy when he's down.
Don't need to kick him while he's down. And plus, like, Notre Dame plays him, and he's going to have like the greatest game anyone's ever had, and we're all going to be sad.
I don't think he'll be starting by then. Unfortunately,
I don't think so.
I would in all seriousness, I think I'm kind of worried about how things are going for him. Like, and obviously you see the response from fans and stuff, and that's a bad situation. Like, if he doesn't play, if it sounds like Narduzzi's sticking with him, and if he doesn't play well the next game, I mean, and I have no idea what their backup, he might be even worse. Who knows, right? But like, it's just a not good situation for a kid like that, especially because he's at his hometown school and it's really going terrible. And he's like, I don't know. It's an unhealthy thing, and
they very clearly aren't comfortable with him throwing the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like 4 of 10, like late into the third quarter. Like they don't want to throw it. Like it's just like I mean, how much that hurts. You have no faith in that. Like you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a good thing. So that's not great situation. Meek Irish says, "What are we saying about Javonte Jean-Baptiste after this game?" I think we're saying he's really good. I think he's gonna have a huge game. That's my take. Do you have a take?
I do think he's going to make an impact in this game. So
Yeah.
I think that's the thing is that, win or lose this game for Notre Dame, people are going to say that, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, that was a good pickup for Notre Dame. Yeah. He showed up.
What I will say is, and this is about Thomas Harper, this is going to be a big game for him. He's going to be very involved. He is going to be up and down in this game. He's going to give up some stuff.
It's just,
and he's going to make some
plays. Nature of the guys are going against.
It's the nature of the position. He is going to be up and down. He is going to be very, very involved in this game. So that's going to be something to monitor. 1980. I can't see that name.
UI grad.
Okay. 1980 UI grad. Based on the first 4 games, where do you feel we are better and worse based on position group? Same for Ohio State. It's a good question.
I don't really know, actually. I think I guess tight end is better, right?
Yeah.
Tight end is better. I think the reason why Notre Dame has played so well is because the groups that were supposed to play well have played well.
Yeah.
And none of the groups that were supposed to be bad have played, worse. You can say that. I would say that at linebacker, you could say okay, Bertrand hasn't had as good of a start. Part of it, obviously, he missed the last game. He missed 1.5 games, right, out of the 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of it, kind of in terms of just his overall impact. And he had the missed tackles in the start. So you could say, I mean, he's playing worse than his kind of level that people are accustomed to. And Marist has obviously played better than he was last year and has improved. And then they haven't got Snead. I think, last game was an example of he's not ready yet as a linebacker. And they haven't had, and we just haven't seen enough of the freshmen. I'm not that I expected them to play a lot, but those guys aren't really in the mix, right? Drake Bowen and Jaden Osbury. I think those guys are both going to be very good players for Notre Dame. But just they haven't been there. So there isn't those guys kind of pushing those top guys because the top guys have been better, frankly, right?
Yeah.
So that might be the one spot. And I think you kind of alluded to it earlier, Greg, but that is maybe a little bit worse. And then whatever, you go there and then we can talk about Ohio State after.
Yeah, so I don't think necessarily any group as a whole is worse. I thought Bertrand and Kaiser and Botelho and Mills would be better. So in that sense, I think they're worse, I guess. Botelho is interesting because, and I texted you this, he's having a very Dalen Hayes type season where
played well versus the run.
Yeah, and he's been when I watch him, I don't see any reps where it's that's a bad rep.
Yeah.
Poor rep. I don't see that.
It's a good comparison.
There's no flashing either, right? So there's he had one missed opportunity against NC State where he was coming in for the sack and Brennan Armstrong made a miss. But he's been good against the run, right? He's been solid. He doesn't have any mental errors. I don't see mental errors from him.
No.
Which is important. And that's sort of true of Kaiser as well. Bertrand's had some missed tackles that have crept up again that I don't like to see. The one where it's the only one where I think, man, what's really going on is Mills. because it's just it's just not there. He should be better. He should be more dominant.
consistent. Yeah.
He should be more consistently good, and he just isn't.
And he's missed some TFLs that he's had opportunities that he hasn't finished, right? So
yeah. And he's getting reached on plays.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, I think that's 100% correct with Mills, right? So,
but it's I don't want to bang him too much. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's just you want more. That's all it is. You want more. And I would say on offense too. Like I think that Fisher and Carell, they've been good. I thought they would be better. I thought their level would be higher, consistently higher. They haven't been bad. So that's kind of where it's at.
I'll say, because James Lawrence said I worry about Marison's the game. I would not worry about him.
I don't worry about it.
He played very well that was the one game actually where I was like, oh, I think Maris might, still be, have that kind of season. It's like the opening game last year, he was very good. Like he was like very physical. Like there was like a couple of like highlight type of stuff where he just like owned Cade Stover at the point of attack and made like a just phenomenal play. Just a couple like just physical plays. And obviously he had the very first blitz of the game where he just destroyed Travion Henderson. And then Cross got the sack, right? Like he made an impact in that game. And then when they ran it on them at the end, it was Bauer and Kaiser who were in the linebackers in at that time, which, probably in hindsight too, like those guys probably shouldn't have been out there. I don't worry about him in this game. I guess flipping to Ohio State, I think they're about as advertised with everything on defense. I would say they're as advertised. I would just say that they've had some inconsistencies with some guys on defense where like Jack Sawyer did not look good in the first 2 games. I was like, this guy's supposed to be a first round pick. He did not look good. Like he was very inconsistent. And then he looks gangbusters against Western Kentucky, but it's like, well, it's Western Kentucky and they're sitting back and chucking the ball, 40 times in the game. So it's like, he gets to kind of just let loose. Right. And I would say too, that like, so but defensively, and then they've given up some stuff here and there, but not really. Like they've been very good defensively. So I think they've been as advertised for the most part. And that was a question about like kind of slot corner and stuff for them. And it's still a question. I think with Ohio State, I think people expected the kind of ups and downs with the quarterback and the offensive line, and that's what they've gotten. Right. And I know that McCord was great in this game against, Western Kentucky, but a lot of his stuff is like, he's like lights out on play action because their teams are playing, obviously they run their backs. I would say their backs have been better even than they've expected. So that's one area where they're better on offense. And then obviously the receivers are as good as advertised. But the offensive line, I think they haven't been tested by anybody good yet. And Josh Simmons, who's the transfer from San Diego State, he had penalty problems at San Diego State. He had 17 penalties last year. He's got 3 in the first 3 games. And they're just like kind of not like disciplined kind of penalties. He is a very talented, extremely physically talented guy who can really get back in his pass set quickly, but and move. And he's got all these NFL traits where this guy, you're like, man, this guy could be a first round pick, but he's very inconsistent and he like gets back too quick in his pass set and he opens up the gate so people can go inside of him. He, if he tries to he'll hop back sometimes and then you can get under him at a bull rush. I think Patrick Fryer is a guy who's big and tall. And if he plays with good leverage, he's very, very good, but he gets high sometimes and get under his pads. And the center Hinsman has played fine, but they played nobody at defensive tackle. So it's like, okay, well, we'll see. And then McCord was not good in the first 2 games, really. Like he was definitely not good against Indiana. So that's something I think it's like monitoring
Yeah.
that. And his good stuff has looked really good. Like he's got a great arm, a big
Yeah.
time arm. And you've seen him make incredible throws, but he's also like young quarterback. He's stuck on the first read too long. He throws it when he shouldn't all the time. He was like, they're obviously trying to get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball as much time, but like,
Mm-hmm.
the first couple games, it was like, 9 of 18 on targets because it was like, well, you should have checked down there or something, right? So there's a lot of that stuff. And this is one thing that I was like, this jumped out when looking at some of the PFF stuff on him.
Mm-hmm.
He's only 6 of 18 in the intermediate throws. Like
Yeah.
that is concerning if I was an Ohio State fan. I'd be like, that's not, I mean, like he's better in the deep ball than he has been in the intermediate stuff. So that's the kind of stuff. It's like because maybe you're not seeing it, right? So
Yeah.
from that perspective too, like I think, and he's been not pressured at all,
Mm-hmm.
basically. So if Notre
12%
Dame is
pressure rate.
if Notre Dame is able to get pressure on him in this game, I think that's big. But I mean, for the most part, both teams have been pretty close to as advertised.
Yeah, they have been as close, as good as advertised. And something that we've kind of talked about a lot, and I also think is as good as advertised, is VSR Media, which was founded
Woo!
by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides a professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. The segues are such a big deal now. Like I can't. It's like I know I'm doing them, and it's just like I can't keep from like smiling about it. It's the thing with the intermediate throws, Jamie, is a lot of the time, and you put it in your your scouting report. He's a first read guy. And a lot of the time, those deep balls, like that's your first read. If the deep ball is there, you let it fly, and like you're very comfortable there. When you got to go through progressions, a lot of the time that's over the middle of the field. Yeah, sometimes that's over the middle of the field, and you're coming back to something you're not as comfortable doing that, and that's why you can get some of the misses on the intermediate stuff. And that's going to come into play in another question here. Chris ND92, would you rather Notre Dame with the ball first? Oh, would you rather Notre Dame with the ball 1st and 10 at the 50, trailing by 4 with 2 minutes left, or have OSU with the ball 1st and 10 at the 50 with 2 minutes left, trailing by 4?
I mean, at the 50 is, I mean, I think I would take the offense just because I just think like at the 50 is more favorable for the offense in both scenarios. So I think I would take ND with the ball.
So because it's at the 50, actually, I funny enough, I want to know how many timeouts are left because it's like in this case at the 50 with 2 minutes left, I kind of feel like I'd rather Notre Dame had the lead with Ohio State with the ball, because I feel like you might get 2 shots at the apple there, because there's a good chance that if Ohio State is to score, you would have some time left to come back and try to kick up, because you'd be down 3 at that point. So you can try to kick a field goal to tie. They've got Spencer Schrader, who's got a really big leg, so he could you don't have to go as far for a field goal attempt. So that's that. I think in the spirit of the question, who would you rather? Do you trust the defense to get a stop more, or do you trust the offense to go down and score a touchdown? Again, I'd want to know what the score is, right? Like is it 45-41?
Yeah.
Like,
That's a good point. That's a great point.
Is it 24?
Is it been
Has
it been a light show out there all day, and like have the yeah? There's all those factors that go into it.
What I would say to this,
sorry to interrupt, but I'm actually going to flip my answer right now, and I'm going to say that it's a defense because it depending on the score, because like you said about the 45-41, but Kyle McCord in that situation, it's like you're betting on like, oh, you'd rather have Sam Hartman, which is obviously a good thing. It was like Kyle McCord in that situation. Like, I mean, prove you're the guy. I'd like put him in that situation.
I would want, and the other part too is I would want the defense out there with the lead because now we're not worried about running game. That's not a factor. It's literally their strength against Notre Dame's strength. Is they're throwing the ball at Notre Dame's secondary. Like you do want to take that if you're Notre Dame, like you would. So
also
that's what I would do.
Ball at the 50. You're not playing prevent. You're playing defense.
Yeah, you're playing for real.
You're playing defense. Yeah. So it's like, with that amount of time left too. So
they're setting pressure. They're doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
So this is the question, significant that we now have separate OC and quarterback coaches. We got to that one already, so we don't really need to answer it. Although I will mention that was a question from Rockney75. So want to point that out. So Rockney75, if you're watching this back, we answered it way earlier in the show. So you'll find that up near the beginning. Special 97, if you were Ohio State's coaches, how would you attack Notre Dame's defense? Who would you target as the weak links?
I mean, if I get so if I'm thinking about like how that NC State game, like just think about that one play where Notre Dame, had that remember that one I tweeted out, Greg, the 5-man rush where it was like they were just kind of closing in and they threw a slot fade and X-Spots actually got beat, but the throw wasn't good, right? And that was just, you're kind of betting on the throw not being good. If I'm Ohio State and I get X Watts or any safety in a one-on-one that's going to be a Mega-Mailbag there, I'm going after that every time. Right. So that's what I would do for them. I think typically that's kind of where, you see the matchups in any game, right? Is that kind of thing. And also I just would challenge, I think I would go at Cam Hart because that you got him last year.
Yeah.
And really too, like he's the only one who gave up anything big, like on a deep ball this year, right? So 100%, he'd be the guy that I would go after if I was Ohio State, and just say like, all right, prove it, right? Let's see it, right? And I think that's that's mainly how I would do it.
I would make Cam Hart tackle. Certainly.
Yeah.
Like I would throw bubbles at him. I would make him come up and be physical, because it's like, look, there's an injury there. Everyone knows. What I would do is, you talked about Emeka in the slot. I'd put Marvin Harrison in the slot a ton in this game. Anytime you can get them on Notre Dame, you involve the linebackers in the passing game. When you involve the safeties in the passing game, like I think the safeties have been good, but it's like, why would you even deal with Ben Morrison? Why would you even Cam Hart? Like, why deal with them when I can get a matchup of Emeka on Thomas Harper, or Emeka on Xavier Watts, or DJ Brown, or Kaiser, or Bertrand, or whatever? Like, that's what I would do, right? It's just a much better matchup for them. So I think there's
second touchdown against Youngstown State too was also on a corner route out of the
so that's what I would do. I would activate my receivers on Notre Dame's middle of the field, and then I'd throw bubble to the field all the time and get Cam Hart involved. That's what I would do, and I think that's what they will do. PQ, what it do? Oh, Jamie, over the summer you did a hot take show, and mine was that Ohio State game is a must win. You disagreed. Has your mind changed? I understand OSU is more talented, but Notre Dame has the edge at quarterback, and it's in South Bend. It just feels like an if not now, when.
How about you go first, Craig? Because we were kind of talking about this
Yeah.
beforehand, and then I'll follow up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is must win. I think it absolutely is. I think this game should absolutely mean more to Notre Dame than Ohio State. Ohio State can lose this game and accomplish everything they want to. They can still win the Big Ten, and if they win the Big Ten, they will go to the playoffs with just the one loss. And so Notre Dame has lost to Ohio State by more than one score in every decade starting in 1995. They did it. They lost by, I think, 22 in 95. They lost by 14 in 2005. They lost by 13 in 2015, and then they lost by 11 last year. Ohio State has no reason to believe that they will lose this game. Their fans have no reason to believe they will lose this game. Notre Dame has to win this game. They have to. It's must win. They need to. As a program, they need it. Full stop. Like no notes. Go. They have to win. It matters more to Notre Dame. It's at home. You have Sam Hartman. You have all of those things. They are unclear at quarterback. In my opinion, it's a must-win game. And someone will naturally ask, well, what does that mean for the rest of the schedule? I don't know. Like Notre Dame has to play the rest of the schedule, win or lose. So I'd say put everything into it and then go do the thing that you have to do anyway. So that's my take on it.
I agree that it does mean more to Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for all the reasons that you said. Although I don't think it's a must. I still don't believe it's a must win. So my mind hasn't changed in that sense because Ohio State is kind of where they're at, specifically roster wise, is where Notre Dame is trying to get to.
Yeah.
So Notre Dame is not there yet. And there's a reason why. I think Notre Dame is, what I've seen from them this year is better than what I expected for them to be this year, just based on the roster. I think they're better. And like they had some development with certain players that I'm like, they're better than I thought they were going to be. But I do think like there's still so many of the guys who are going to be the best guys on the team and are going to be like more of like top NFL guys are like the young guys on the team. Mm-hmm. And I think they have CJ Carr in 2024 committed. Mm-hmm. They just got Deuce Knight in 2025. They got Cam Williams. Could Notre Dame use a Cam Williams type in this game, right? They are going to be at a different level in terms of where they are now in terms of skill talent. So I think the ceiling as a program is Notre Dame is nowhere near where they are going to be and should be in the next few years under Marcus Freeman. So because of that, like, and let's just face it, Ohio State has a better roster. So I can't call it a must-win game when it's like they have to beat the team that is better than them on paper, right? Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, I can't call it that. I will say that this is a sneaky huge game for Ryan Day. And I mean, he's 25-4 in his last 29 games. Pretty good. Like, and they beat everybody that they're supposed to. They just have, right? But you look at the 4 losses. He's got 2 losses against Michigan. Obviously, everybody knows that. They lose to Georgia. Yes, they lost by, it was like could have been either way game. Obviously, Harrison gets hurt, probably the difference in the game, really. They missed a field goal at the end. They lose, right? Mm-hmm. And they lost to Oregon. So it's like, but it's weird. At a place like Ohio State, it's like, those are the games you're supposed to win, right? So those are the teams. So it's like, wow. It's like, weirdly, it's like Ryan Day can't win the big games against the big programs. And that is his thing. And especially if alum Marcus Freeman beats you, I don't want to say I'm whatever. I have no idea how Ohio State's. I'm not listening to like local Columbus radio, but I have to imagine it's going to be unkind to him if they lost this game, like I said, because they have on paper a better roster, right? So, yeah, so it's, I don't know, bring it all back. I don't think it's a must-win game. I totally see all your points, Greg, but I just don't think it's they're quite there yet for Notre Dame to call it a must-win game.
Yeah. I agree with the Ryan Day take, by the way, because I think the way that Ohio State fans feel about things, like losing to Michigan is an insult, right? Like it's an insult. You're losing our little brother, that team up there, like you won't say their name kind of thing. Like that's an insult. Should never happen. I think that losing to Notre Dame to them is like a disgrace. You listen to Ohio State fans talk about Notre Dame, they are like so dismissive. And I can't hate on it, because why would they be anything other than that? If Notre Dame flipped the situation, Notre Dame would not respect a team with that they have the track record against that's supposed to be good, right? Like they're just dismissive of it. Losing to Notre Dame is like it's a disgraceful act in just the way that they talk about it. So I think it's a huge game for him. If you lose to Notre Dame, like they will want him fired, and they'll talk about it all the time until they play Michigan. And if they beat Michigan, then maybe they'll be fine with it. I think if he loses to Notre Dame and Michigan this year, like I think they might fire him. I just think they might.
Yeah, it's John Cooper.
Right? Yeah. So I just, the way that I see it is it's must win because you're 3-point dogs at home. And again, the quarterback situation is what it is. You just, it means so much. Look at the credit that Michigan gets for beating them.
Oh, yeah. They earned it. They earned it.
But like, they go to the playoffs and they lose by 4 touchdowns.
And it doesn't matter. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. And then everyone pumps them up.
They lose to TCU, who got boat raced, and doesn't matter.
They lose to TCU, who loses 65-6 or whatever it was, 65-7. And it doesn't matter. No one cares. They beat Ohio State. They are a made program. That's how people think about it. And so I just think for Notre Dame, this is the moment where Ohio State is a little bit down. The fact that they could put Ryan Day on the hot seat like this with no clear successor, it like that you could flip the balance of the Midwest recruiting wise. You really could. And Marcus Freeman and Chad Bowden and that whole crew, their whole recruiting operation, they would pounce on this like you won't believe. And I know you believe it, but just fans, like they will pounce on this so hard. And someone asked the question before, like, are there players going to be at this game who Notre Dame could flip? I don't know about like at the game or whatever, but this will be watched by all the players that they want to be in on. You beat Ohio State, and that could turn the tide. Like there is kind of a tide turning in college football right now, and Notre Dame could be a part of that. That's why I just like, and I know that the current players, like they don't really care about any of that, but there's also the history. There's also they're dismissive. They don't respect you. They just don't, And so that's why I think like what your points are totally fair. Like it's not even, I just view it. That's how I view it. and it doesn't really matter whether it's must win or not. It's just something for us to talk about. So, but I think it's good something to bring up. All right, we're almost done. We got 3 more questions. Keenan Knight says, how must Bear and his family be feeling today? I don't think I've ever seen 2 top quarterbacks in the race in a race to commit first. Grateful to be in this position. I don't know. I think
it's a pretty typical scenario, actually, where it's like that happens everywhere, where it's like they put pressure because teams typically only take 1 quarterback.
Yeah.
So they let them know, especially they're like, if this guy, if you don't commit, we're going to give the spot to this guy. That happens all the time. And it's happened at Notre Dame before too, right? Like,
I mean, maybe it's tough, but we don't also know really like if Bear was feeling Notre Dame. We don't know that, maybe he wasn't really into it. Right.
He probably wasn't ready to do anything anyway. So,
So it's, it is what it is. Good luck to Bear. Good football player. Good football player. Iris KG07. Parker and his staff have made good adjustments against NC State, and they'll likely need to adapt through this game as well. Is Jim Knowles a better DC than Tony Gibson? How tough of a chess match do we expect?
I mean, I don't think I think they're on the same level. Tony Gibson's a really, really good defensive coordinator. Jim Knowles is a really, really good defensive coordinator. The difference is that Ohio State has way better players.
Good ingredients.
NC State, right? Just overall depth wise and more top of the line guys who are going to be like high NFL draft picks. They're deeper, they're better. So that makes that game harder. And I mean, it's just like you're playing a chess against, whatever, Bobby Fischer. I don't know.
Yeah.
Name a top guy or whatever. I'm not familiar with all the top guys in chess history or whatever, but you're going against somebody who's better and who's got better materials and better strategy and stuff. And then it's easier to call defense when you have the players, right? So I think it's why like Jim Knowles was at Duke and people were like, yeah, he's a good coordinator, but it's like he didn't really have like anything close to the material that he's got at Ohio State. And that's the difference, right? So it's a test for Parker for sure, but it's going to be a thing where I think what we saw in that NC State game is that, he was certainly up for it and he utilized, I mean, no one was really talking about the tight ends in a big way before that game. All of a sudden people were like, man, Holden Stays is a dude, right? Like, just happened just like that.
Yeah. It's, he was ready for the challenge then. Hopefully he's ready this weekend. Teacher Man 87. Do you think Tyree could have a really big day against Ohio State? If so, how do you think Notre Dame might use him to create mismatches against their defense? I think Saturday might be a day Tyree finally becomes a legend. Keep hitting and hustling. Thank you for that. Let's all keep hitting and hustling. We talked about Tyree a little bit earlier. So we kind of touched on that and the matchups that could be there against their safeties and their slot. This is what I'll say about Tyree. He needs to do better catching punts. He is letting too many drop. Like Notre Dame is doing very poorly right now in terms of
field position.
And this is a big part of it. He's letting the ball go and they're gaining another 10, 15 yards. It's like the exact opposite of Brandon Joseph last year, where he caught everything and then he would catch it, run for 10, like never a chance he's going to break a big one. But it's like you catch it, you run for 10, like instead of letting it fall and you lose 10 to 15, like it's a 25-yard difference.
Yeah.
Like there are too many times where I watch him and I'm like, you got to catch it. You have to catch the ball. And against Central Michigan, it doesn't matter. But against Ohio State, matters, right? Having an extra 25 yards matters. So, but we talked about him on offense, and we think he could have a big game. Do you have a comment on that, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about a legend, but I mean, certainly he'll be like remembered fondly if he has a big game here. It's just like how Chris Fink, if anyone brings up Chris Fink, and any Notre Dame fan brings up Chris Fink, the first thing that comes up is that catch against Michigan.
Yeah.
Right. That's the first thing that comes up. So you get remembered for what you do in these big games, right? So I think that's, something that if you want to kind of, if you're looking for that, if you're a player, you're looking for that and you want to be remembered fondly, it's about like, man, remember when this guy had this great game? And like, that's when it matters, right?
Avery
That's when it
Davis.
matters. Avery Davis.
Yeah.
It's a big moment guy. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Last question of the day. Original Bubs. Visualizing it. What happens that we've seen evidence this year that this will be a winning game? Do we play keep away, keep possessions low, and defense off the field, and keep the defense off the field, hope to get a turnover, or can our pass rush actually disrupt this team?
I think playing keep away, I think to a certain extent, they do kind of have to have not the exact same strategy as last year, but you don't want to make it a shootout. Try to make it a shootout. Like that's not something that you want to do in this kind of thing. Because I think if you just, the more plays you give Ohio State's offense, the more dangerous it is, just because it's like at some point, that's when Harrison and Egbuka and Henderson and Trianum, like those guys are going to make plays eventually if you give them enough snaps, right? So your defense can only do so much if you give them too many snaps, right? So I think that's partial. So it's partially true of like Notre Dame. I think the time of possession is important in this game. But I really think it's the explosives, right? That's what's going to matter. Because Georgia and Michigan, they really didn't have like super effective days of just like running their offense, but they had a ton of explosives against Ohio State last year. And that's one of the things too, where Jim Knowles, their defense coordinator, he said like he was too aggressive.
Yeah.
So in that sense, he doesn't want to give those kind of plays up this year. So that'll be kind of interesting to see what it is. I think the pass rush, it's like kind of undetermined, right? It's kind of undetermined, right? And so I really kind of think of like where Notre Dame has obviously played tremendous against the pass this year, but they haven't played against these receivers. And if you give McCord time, or if you give him like this is a defined read that he can make this throw, no, that's not going to be good for Notre Dame, right? Yeah. So it's on the back end they got to disrupt what McCord's seeing, and if they can affect him, because he just has not had pressure against them at all this year, and he hasn't been good against pressure like most young quarterbacks. So if that is absolutely going to be one of the keys to the game.
Yeah. The pressure piece. So first, also let's talk about the explosives. Like this is when, like I was talking about in the Navy game when Hartman was late to Tobias, and I'm talking about it, and I pointed out on the Twitter machine, and everyone's like, "Why are you talking about this? They were 17-21 or whatever." I'm like, I understand that, but you can't miss that against Ohio State because you can't just drive the field against them. They're too good. No one did that. Michigan didn't do that. You know what I mean? They hit explosives. That's how they scored their points. You have to hit those shots. That's why it's important to hit Tyree on that one. Like you got to hit him if it's there. On Twitter yesterday, I pointed out like Hartman took the check down, no problem. Like you could take a check down on 2nd and long. Fine. Get to 3rd and 5. But you also have a chance to hit Tobias deep. And it's like, if you don't want to throw that one, fine. But you do have to hit that kind of a play in a game like this. That's how they've been beaten. Right. It's the nature of a good defense, right? They're very aggressive. And that's the nature of how an aggressive defense is. They're going to give up stuff in the back. As far as the pass rush, there's been a lot of talk about like the lack of sacks and everything, but think back to how many times against NC State in Brennan Armstrong, the eyes drop.
Yeah.
That's what you want. You want that quarterback, and this can happen to McCord, and this is where it's like youth, and this is where CJ Stroud made such good strides, because when he escaped the pocket, eyes still downfield, still dangerous. Caleb Williams, when he escapes the pocket, eyes still downfield, still dangerous. Kyle McCord, when he feels it and it's not there, what happens? The eyes come down. And once the eyes go to the rush, usually you got him. Whatever it is, even if he escapes it, like he's not looking downfield anymore, that is the key. Anytime you can drop his eyes, him more so than any other quarterback, they're going to, like a good quarterback that they're going to play. Kate Klubnik is like this as well. Like once those eyes go down, you have, whether you sack him or not, you have made this play not what they want to do. They did not design this play for him to have his eyes down and running around the backfield. That's the key to everything, whether you sack him or not.
Absolutely. That is why the pass defense has been so good, right? Is because they've, in addition to the secondary being really, really good, that, you force balls in that maybe you shouldn't throw when guys are really not open, right? You because of the rush. You make bad decisions and throw picks like Armstrong did. You just throw the ball away. Armstrong could have had a bunch of other ones too, right? Like, or even that play where Thomas Harper against Central Michigan, the play right before the sack where they ran a boot and Harper had it and he just kind of threw it. He was trying to throw it away, right? And he did effectively, but it doesn't count as a havoc play, but it is. You know what I mean? It's the exact same kind of thing. Should mention too that Notre Dame, according to PFF, has a 47.4% pressure rate this year. That's obviously great.
If that's the case in this game,
they're going to blow the doors off Ohio State. If that happens in this game, they will blow the doors off of Ohio State. So it can't be last year where it was only 20%. That is absolutely, it's crucial. The pressure they put on McCord, because if they get pressure on McCord, that is when he's going to throw picks. He's going to be off to Ohio State's receivers, all of those things. So super important.
Super chat from Corey Flynn. How much Notre Dame running into a brick wall will we see, and will it shift third, fourth quarter? Thanks, Greg and Uyama. I think he means offense. And look, Michigan, again, going back to that, like you do have to just be persistent. Be persistent. Keep doing it. Make them defend that. Hit plays over the top, and then it opens up late. Like that is how it can work. If it's not there early, don't worry about it. Like just keep at it. Play the way you need to play. Now, if you fall behind big, then obviously that changes, but then you have other problems. So that's how I feel about that. Did you have a take on that, Jamie?
No, I think it's if you get it and they're like, Ohio State is like, we need to stop, Audric Estime. We need to, this is like fourth quarter. It's 4-minute offense. They're trying to run it down our throats and kind of feel the game. And Parker had such a great feel of like, they're geeking up to stop the run, play action. And so that's where you can get it. And that's one thing I think I probably felt the best about Parker is that he just had a great feel for when to do that and to stay aggressive.
Yeah.
Right. Just even when they were up 21 points against, and then they decided to do another, like another one to stays, right? Like, love that. Like, go for the kill, just do it. So, I think it's going to, I don't know. I think this is going to be a very tight game, guys. And, I'm excited. I can't wait.
It's, I'm so fired up.
It's a marathon session.
We just did a 2-hour show and I just don't even care. I just feel great. So, that's going to do it though. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks for hanging with us. We said it was a mega mailbag and it was. So, if you haven't caught us before, if you haven't done so, please subscribe, please hit the notification bell so you know we're going live. We'll be back Thursday. More OSU stuff. anything that's come up in press conferences or throughout the week. So thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of the day, and we will talk to you on Thursday. Keep hitting and hustling.